Have you ever wondered how our modern world came to be? The answer lies in the ancient civilization of Greece. Now let's go back in time, way back to the dawn of civilization, to the earliest known period of ancient Greece, the Paleolithic era. This era, which roughly translates to Old Stone Age, began around 200,000 years ago. Our ancestors in this era were nomadic hunter-gatherers, relying on the land and sea for sustenance. As the millennia rolled on, these early cultures began to settle, forming the first permanent settlements in Greece. These settlements, though primitive by our standards, were a significant leap forward. They were the first signs of a civilization taking root, a civilization that would one day shape the course of human history. From these humble beginnings, the Cycladic civilization emerged around the 3rd millennium BC in the islands of the Aegean Sea. This civilization is best known for its unique marble figurines and musical culture. The people of Cyclades crafted complex instruments and composed beautiful melodies, revealing an early appreciation for the arts that would become a hallmark of Greek culture. As the Cycladic civilization blossomed, another was rising on the island of Crete. The Minoan civilization, named after the mythical king Minos, was a marvel of the ancient world. Known for their advanced architecture and vibrant frescoes, the Minoans were a beacon of culture and sophistication in a world just awakening to the possibilities of civilization. These early civilizations, the Cycladic and Minoan, were the first steps in a long journey. They set the stage for the evolution of a society that would go on to make unparalleled contributions to art, philosophy, politics, and science. They formed the bedrock on which the edifice of ancient Greece was built. This period laid the foundation for what was to become one of the most influential civilizations in human history. They were the first notes in the symphony of civilization that was to follow, a symphony that still echoes today in our modern world. As we delve deeper into the past, we encounter the Mycenaeans, the first true Greeks. Emerging from the Bronze Age around 3,000 years before the Common Era, the Mycenaean civilization was a time of heroes, epic tales, and monumental architecture. Named after the archaeological site of Mycenae in the northeastern Peloponnese, the Mycenaeans are often considered the first true Greeks, their culture and society laying the foundation for what would become classical Greek civilization. This era is characterized by its grand palaces and fortresses, with the most iconic being the Lion Gate at Mycenae. These structures speak volumes about the Mycenaean society, a complex hierarchical society ruled by warrior kings. Theirs was a world of power and prestige where the mighty ruled and the weak served. Mycenaean culture was rich and vibrant. With an intricate writing system known as Linear B, they were among the first Greeks to leave their mark in written form. This was a society that valued art, craftsmanship, and trade. Their pottery, frescoes, and goldwork reveal a sophisticated society with a taste for luxury and a keen eye for detail. The Mycenaeans were also a seafaring people, their influence spreading across the Aegean and Mediterranean. From their interactions with the Minoans of Crete, the Hittites of Anatolia, and the Egyptians, they adopted and adapted elements of these cultures, infusing them into their own. However, the Mycenaeans' greatest contribution to later Greek civilization was perhaps their mythology. Their stories, passed down through the ages, would inspire the epic poems of Homer, the tragedies of Sophocles, and the philosophies of Plato. Heroes such as Agamemnon, Achilles, and Odysseus, whose tales were set in this era, would become the stuff of legends, their exploits shaping the Greek understanding of heroism, honor, and the human condition. As we look back, the Mycenaeans stand as a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. They were a people who took the raw materials of the world around them and forged a civilization that would echo through the ages. The Mycenaeans were a beacon of civilization in a world still finding its footing. But all that glitters is not gold, and the shining civilization of Mycenae was about to face a period of darkness. The Mycenaean civilization, once a beacon of prosperity and power in the Bronze Age, was on the brink of a precipitous decline. The grand palaces and bustling city centers that once hummed with activity slowly fell into silence. The exact cause of this downfall remains a topic of debate among historians, but a leading theory points to the Dorian invasion as a primary catalyst. The Dorians, a Greek tribe from the north, swept through the peninsula around 1200 BC. This invasion, coupled with internal unrest, resulted in the collapse of the Mycenaean civilization, plunging Greece into a period known as the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages, a time of societal regression, lasted for about 4 centuries. The once flourishing cities were abandoned and the population dispersed into small, isolated farming communities. The art of writing, once a prized skill, was forgotten, and even the practice of trade dwindled. The grandeur of Mycenaean civilization was reduced to mere echoes in the wind, its glory becoming a part of forgotten history. Yet, even in these bleak times, the seeds of a new civilization were being sown. The Dorians, though they brought destruction, also brought with them iron-working technology, replacing the Bronze Age tools and weapons. This technological advancement would prove instrumental in the development of the new era. The societal structure also underwent a transformation. The hierarchical system of kings and nobles was replaced by a more egalitarian society, paving the way for the concept of democracy, a cornerstone of the forthcoming classical age. The Dark Ages were a time of turmoil, but they set the stage for a new era of Greek civilization. The ashes of the Mycenaean civilization gave birth to a society that would leave an indelible mark on world history, a society that embraced change and rose from the ashes like a phoenix to usher in the Archaic period. Emerging from the darkness, the Greeks entered a new era known as the Archaic period. This epoch, lasting from the 8th to the 6th centuries BCE, marked a time of profound transformation and renaissance for the Greek civilization. As the curtain of the Dark Ages lifted, Greek society began to reorganize and rebuild itself. This period saw the establishment of city-states, or polis, a form of political organization that would come to define the Greek world. Each polis was an independent entity with its own government, laws, and customs. Among the most famous of these city-states were Athens, Sparta, and Corinth. These city-states, despite their differences, shared a common language and culture, fostering a sense of unity among the Greeks. Alongside the rise of the city-states, the Archaic period witnessed the birth of politics. The city-states were often ruled by aristocrats, but as trade increased and wealth became more evenly distributed, the power dynamics began to shift. Many city-states moved away from aristocratic rule towards more democratic forms of governance. In Athens, for example, the foundations of democracy were laid down by Solon, a reformer who sought to balance power between the rich and the poor. This era also saw the creation of the Greek alphabet, adapted from the Phoenician script. This new system of writing, with its distinct letters for vowels and consonants, was far more versatile than previous scripts. It facilitated the recording of history, laws, and most importantly, the splendid works of literature and philosophy that would become a cornerstone of Greek and indeed Western culture. In the field of art, too, the Greeks made significant strides. The Archaic period was characterized by the development of the kouros and chora, freestanding statues of young men and women that showcased the Greek fascination with the human form. These figures, though somewhat stiff and formal, were precursors to the more naturalistic sculptures of the classical period. The Archaic period was a time of renewal, setting the stage for the golden age of Greece. It was a period of growth and change, where the Greeks rediscovered their past, redefined their present, and laid the foundations for a future that would echo through the annals of history. Now we arrive at the most famous era of Greek history, the Classical period. This remarkable period, spanning from the 5th to the 4th century BC, was a time of significant political and cultural evolution. The city-state, or polis, was the defining political institution, with Athens and Sparta being the most prominent. The concept of democracy, a term coined in Athens meaning rule by the people, was a radical political innovation of this era. It's fascinating to think that the democratic ideals we hold dear today were born out of the political experiments of this time. The Classical period also saw the unfolding of the Persian Wars, a series of conflicts between the mighty Persian Empire and the Greek city-states. These wars were a defining struggle of the era, with battles such as Marathon and Thermopylae leaving an indelible mark on the annals of history. The Greeks against all odds emerged victorious, and their triumph over the Persians became a symbol of their cultural superiority. Speaking of cultural achievements, Athens, under the leadership of Pericles, transformed into the intellectual and artistic center of the ancient world. The city was adorned with magnificent structures such as the Parthenon, and it attracted the brightest minds of the era. Philosophy, drama, history, and the sciences flourished in this vibrant city, and the works of Socrates, Plato, and Aristophanes, to name just a few, continue to shape our thought and culture to this day. Yet this era was not without its conflicts. The Peloponnesian War, a devastating conflict between Athens and Sparta, marked the end of the classical period. This war, as Thucydides wrote, was a war like none other, and its consequences altered the course of Greek history. The classical period was a time of great achievement, but it was also a time of conflict. But isn't it the very friction between ideals and reality, between creation and destruction, that makes history so captivating? The flame of the classical period flickered out, giving way to the Hellenistic period. This era, stretching from the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE to the Roman conquest of Greece in 31 BCE, was a time of tremendous change and upheaval. The Hellenistic period was ushered in by the conquests of Alexander the Great. His empire, vast and sprawling, stretched from Greece to Egypt and as far east as India. Alexander's military campaigns were not just about territorial expansion, they were also vehicles for the spread of Greek culture. His strategy of founding cities and establishing military colonies throughout his empire seeded the growth of Hellenistic culture in the Eastern Mediterranean and beyond. Greek became the lingua franca of this new Hellenistic world, and Greek customs, art, and philosophy permeated the cultures it touched. This cultural diffusion, known as Hellenization, was a defining characteristic of the period. The influence of Greek thought and aesthetic sensibilities can be seen in the architecture, sculpture, and literature of the time. The Hellenistic period also saw the rise of new philosophical schools. The Stoics, for instance, taught that virtue was the highest form of happiness and that it could be achieved by living in harmony with nature. The Epicureans, on the other hand, believed that pleasure was the ultimate good and advocated for a life free from pain and fear. These philosophical movements, along with others, shaped much of the intellectual landscape of the time. But the Hellenistic period was not just about cultural flowering. It was also a time of political turmoil and decline. The great empire Alexander had built, fragmented after his death into a number of smaller kingdoms, each vying for power. The constant warfare and power struggles weakened the Greek city-states and left them vulnerable to Roman conquest. The Hellenistic period brought Greek culture to the wider world, but it also marked the end of Greek independence. The legacy of this era, however, lives on in the many ways Hellenistic culture has influenced the world. The sun set on the Hellenistic period as the Romans rose to power. As the Roman Republic expanded, its gaze turned towards the Greek city-states, the cradle of Western civilization. The Roman conquest of Greece was not a sudden onslaught. It was rather a gradual process, beginning with the First Macedonian War in the early 2nd century BC. As the Romans triumphed over the Macedonians, they gradually annexed the Greek city-states, ending Greek independence. Yet the Romans did not merely conquer Greece. They were captivated by its culture, its philosophy, its art, and its sciences. They admired the Greeks' intellectual achievements so much that they incorporated much of the Greek culture into their own. Greek gods and goddesses were identified with their Roman counterparts. Greek philosophy influenced Roman thought, and Greek art and architecture became the model for Roman artists and architects. The Romans understood that the Greeks had something they lacked, a rich and sophisticated cultural heritage. They saw the value in preserving these treasures, and so they did. Greek literature was translated into Latin, Greek plays were performed in Roman theatres, and Greek philosophy was taught in Roman schools. This cultural absorption was so profound that it led to the phenomenon known as Hellenization. Even as the Romans ruled, the Greek language, thought, and way of life permeated Roman society. This was a conquest not of armies but of minds, not with swords but with ideas. The Greek city-states may have lost their independence, but their culture survived, thrived, and spread far beyond their borders. The Romans may have been the conquerors, but in many ways they also became the conquered, succumbing to the allure of Greek culture. The Roman conquest was more than just a change of political power. It marked the birth of a new era, the Roman era, where Greek culture lived on under a new banner. The Greek flame was not extinguished, it was carried forth, illuminating the path for future civilizations. The Roman conquest marked the end of Greek independence, but the legacy of ancient Greece lived on. The civilization of ancient Greece may have ended, but its influence is still felt today. This magnificent culture left us a legacy that has endured the passage of time, shaping the world in ways that reverberate through the centuries. In philosophy, Greek thinkers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle laid the foundations of Western philosophical thought, challenging us to question, to reason, and to seek truth. In politics, the Greeks birthed democracy, a radical idea that the people should govern themselves, an ideal still pursued and cherished today. Their artistic contributions, from the stirring epics of Homer to the timeless tragedies of Sophocles, continue to inspire and move us. In science, Greek scholars such as Euclid and Archimedes introduced concepts and methods that underpin modern mathematics and physics. The civilization of ancient Greece may be gone, but its spirit lives on in our modern world.